Is this the biggest stitch up yet? This one's a bit tricky. Caught you guys out, otherwise you would have shafted me. Straight up, I remember this one. You dirty buggers. The kids in the office, my highly experienced, highly valued staff here, have been banging on about this game called GeoGuessr.
I don't know where we are. Is this in Australia? Oh my God!
And I didn't really take much notice or much interest until they've thrown me under the bus and said they have set up a GeoGuessr game for 4-wheel drive TV for me. So apparently I've got to play this on the computer, identify locations from our past episodes, which is in excess of about 2,500, heading towards 3,000 episodes. The thousands of trips I've done over the last 21 years of 4-wheel drive TV history.
Damn!
And I've got to try and recall these locations just from a screenshot. All right, guys, here we go. Let's hit play. All right, a nice rocky track. I'd like to say rocky track in Tallarook, but I don't think it is. I can't say I recognise this one. It's got to be in Australia somewhere. It's definitely in Australia. Look at all those gum trees. It could be one of the trips we've done to Queensland. It could be, you know what? I know where that is now. You dirty buggers. That's Coffs Harbour. That's the corner where I rolled the Iveco. I recognise it now. You nasty buggers. All right, now we've got a map here. We can scroll around on the map. We can zoom in. Where's Coffs Harbour again? North of Newcastle. So Coffs Harbour was a pretty eventful trip for us. As I mentioned, we did roll the big Iveco and we did go back to re-drive the track, which apart from the mistake I made on the first time was quite an easy track. Steep, a little bit off camber, rocky. It was an enjoyable track, and I think the second time turning the vehicle around on that side slope was harder than actually the first time when I flipped the big rig over. But flipping the big rig over, the recovery was probably the highlight, because Honey and I chose to stay in the vehicle to keep it secure while it was being recovered. And our team outside, we had some brilliantly experienced people who stayed calm, kept everyone, including me, calm, and got the big rig back on its wheels. Now, that rollover was the second shot on the first day of that trip on the first track. So we got the Iveco back on its wheels and we continued for the whole day. Drove all day, drove everything successfully without an issue until the last track, where I launched the truck up a massive rock ledge and landed on the transfer case, snapping one of the 3 mounts off the transfer case and leaving us with a very nasty driveline vibration. But we were able to strap the transfer case in place and drive the vehicle back to Melbourne, get it all welded up and repaired, no sweat at all. So Coffs Harbour, pretty eventful. There's some other fantastic tracks in there. There's a stack of great tracks. We stayed at an awesome campsite, Coffs Harbour Farm Stay, and it is well worth a trip to the area. So Coffs Harbour, good one, guys. I did eventually get that one, but it took a bit. Start next round. All right. A big scenic shot. Okay, this one I can zoom in. Power lines. I'm thinking this is the Blue Mountains. Let's have a crack at that. It's in Australia. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Let's guess there. How far off? Actually, I'm not too far off. So the landscape, the views, the cliff faces made it look like we're up in the Blue Mountains, maybe even sort of the Lithgow region out of Sydney. There've been a number of trips to that region. Nothing really stands out as a major exciting moment, although we did drag a number of caravans up through that rocky pass, which is just one of the most beautiful drives I believe you can do in a 4-wheel drive in Australia. It's a tough, nerve-wracking climb for medium to inexperienced 4-wheel drivers, so it's definitely a track well worth going and having a look at.
Thank you, Simon.
And it's on the Heritage Trail, might have been a little bit crazy to take caravans up through there, but we proved that you could do it and do it safely. And it just takes a little bit of time, care, and experience, but a beautiful, stunning area, and maybe a bit sad because certain parts of that area are being closed, locked off for no reason, which is a bit disappointing, but nonetheless, a beautiful trip. And just around the corner from there are two highlights as well for me. One is one of the steepest descents into a valley in Australia. That is a crazy, crazy sealed road, but well worth a drive. And the other one is Maingu Maragu. It's a beautiful spot, and there's a small waterfall in there with a fernery, and we had a guide, a local Indigenous guide, who took us through the spot. We even had one of the aunties turn up and come to the campsite with us and share a beer. But the presence, the spirit, the feelings throughout that gorge and that location, you can see why it's a very special place. A lot of people think I'm anti-national parks, but places like that need national parks. They need that higher level of conservation and protection because that is a beautiful spiritual location. And Maingu Maragu is a place that will always stick with me. I've been there 3 times now, and I'll always look forward to going back. Again, a beautiful spot, one of the highlights in the Blue Mountains, and well worth a trip. Okay, this one is dead easy. This is the gorge at the Nara Trail Mountain 4-wheel drive park that is owned by my mate Naozumi Tsuda. Now, I've been going to this park regularly since 2017, and it is the home of extreme rock crawling in Japan. Nobody owns land in Japan, and this guy has, I think, close to 1,000 acres in the mountains. His family's owned the property for over 200 years. The house he lives in is an extension of his parents' house, which is a 120-year-old building. That's stunning, but the property itself is just an absolute 4-wheel drive mecca, and they hold some amazing rock crawling events in there. Now, the guy Naozumi who owns it, when he decided to turn it into a rock crawling park, he shipped in something crazy like 80 tons of rock. Now, that huge amount of rock came in 80 trucks, and those trucks damaged the road to the point, the main road through the town. He was on the verge of being arrested for damaging local property in Japan and going to jail until he agreed that he would pay for all the repairs. That he did. The park went ahead with great success, and it is an amazing property. I was invited to compete there one year, and I was thrown into a rock crawl that I'd never driven before. I've never actually competed in rock crawling, and there were 17 teams in my class, and it ended up coming 4th out of 17 teams. So the event organizer was pretty surprised. I was pretty surprised, and I was absolutely stoked with my effort, and I had a ball doing it. So that park there is a big centre point for Japan, the 4-wheel drive scene there. A lot of the major companies, like Toyota, do their vehicle testing there, and so it's just a real mecca for off-roading in Japan, and they've got a big event coming up. The last trip we did there was December 2024, and that was for Trail Hero Japan. An amazing event. 36 Americans came over. They bought 6 or 7 vehicles from America. I went over with a couple of mates and a team. We filmed it. We were there. The event was awesome. It was a crazy, crazy event. The Americans won it, as you'd expect. But 2027 April, Sakura season, we're going back, I think, because they are running Trail Hero Japan #2. So book it in, guys, if you want to see some serious rock crawling in Japan. Get yourself to Nara Trail Mountain, just out of Uda City. It is an absolutely awesome spot. This is another easy one. This is China. This one is Inner Mongolia. It is the eastern side of Inner Mongolia, and it is north, almost directly north of Beijing. We did a trip into this area. We went to a beautiful museum, learned a lot about the history of the Mongols in the region, the Chinese in the area, and then we went out into these dunes. And the dunes are unlike anything we get to experience here in Australia. This trip was incredible. It was special. It was a nasty trip where I think I smashed a 200 series Land Cruiser pretty badly. But the trip itself was just stunning. Extensive dunes, great people, getting stuck in the sand, self-recovering, meeting nomadic farmers, an elderly guy who didn't understand much of my Chinese, but we had a funny conversation. The food was pretty good. I think we did some cooking out there, and It was one of our first trips into China where we actually got to go off-road and do some serious wheeling. Just an amazing, impressive experience. You guys will see the footage, just stunning. So guys, this is just one small slice of a continent. It's one of the biggest continents in the world. And the amount of off-roading and the rate of growth of off-roading in China is just phenomenal. This for us was pretty much the start of it. So this is one of the earlier trips. We did that with Yunliang 4x4. He's a massive distributor out of Beijing. And the four-wheel drive scene there, like I said, it's huge and it's growing faster than any four-wheel drive community in the entire world. So guys, China, keep an eye on it because stuff there is happening and happening quickly.
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie! Oi, oi, oi!
Here we go again. Oh, straight up, I remember this one. You guys are giving me such good clues. This is a lake, a freshwater lake in Vietnam. Now, we reached out to some guys in Vietnam, the local ARB distributor, Min Phan, and said, hey, we're coming over. Can you guys organise something for us to film? He said, no problem at all. So we head over there. My mate Danny came with me. We got picked up at 5:30 in the morning from the hotel in Ho Chi Minh, Saigon City, and we headed out. We toured right across the city of Saigon as the city woke up, as the sun rose, and witnessed 1 million people on scooters rubbernecking two white gringos in an open top ex-Vietnam military Jeep as we raced across the city. As we went out of the city, we met up with some four-wheel drivers. We kept going for breakfast. We met up with more four-wheel drivers. We stopped at a petrol station. We met up with more four-wheel drivers and we had quite the convoy. I said to our guide, are we going to the jungle? No. In Vietnam, we're done with the jungle. Are we going mudding? No, we're over the mud. Are we going to be doing some big hill climbs? No, no, no. We don't do the big hill climbs here anymore. We're over that. So what are we going to be doing? And he said, we're going to be doing King of the Water. Now what that was something totally out of my perception. We went to a lake. These guys jumped into their Jeeps. The whole idea isn't to drive across the lake. The whole idea isn't to float. The whole idea is to sink the Jeep and see how far they can drive along the bottom of the lake. So these guys have got extensions on the exhaust. They've got extensions on the snorkels. They're standing on the driver's seat, sometimes sitting on the headrest. They're sometimes wearing goggles and a snorkel, and they're attempting to drive across these lakes. Now, these guys are very proficient at it, except for one problem. This was a new lake they hadn't been to before, and it didn't have a flat bottom. It was a V. So every time they drove in, they sunk. They moved to a couple of different spots and they sent this one guy in, Min, and he reversed out because he thought that's a better plan so he can winch back to safety more easily. And he was going well until the Jeep got to a point where it just started bobbing like a buoy, and then everything bubbled up and Min and his Jeep sunk. Now it felt like we were there waiting for a good minute, but it was only about 15 seconds and Min's head popped up. He had to let go of his Jeep and swim to the top. Now everybody was absolutely cracking themselves laughing. Myself and Danny, we're standing there with our jaws just hanging like we can't believe what we're witnessing. Is this for real? And I said, why is everyone laughing? And they turned around, giggling their heads off and just said, it's so funny because Min, he can't swim. So they're laughing at their friend who's almost drowning. His Jeep has gone to the bottom of the lake.
It's happening at last.
And they're having a huge, huge time. Now, things turn sour pretty quickly because it's sort of still a communist country and you can't have gatherings of more than 4 or 5 people, and especially not with white people, foreigners around who've got cameras. So the police got called. They heard about this gathering and the police were on the way. We got word police were on the way and we were quickly rushed off to a lunch spot away from everybody else and didn't really realise what was going on until it was all too late, but we got out of there safely. After lunch, we were then transported to another location where we met up with everybody again, and the fun just kept going. So these guys had one of these ex-military Jeeps. They bolted pontoons to the side, a pontoon to the front, and they drove it out across the lake. Now this time we were at a beachside. It's a freshwater lake, but right on the edge of the sand from the ocean. So imagine this, we're in Vietnam, we've been spinning around in the dunes, we've been driving up and down the beach, like experiences you have no idea you can get in Vietnam. We're there and we're doing it and we're filming it. They then sail this Jeep out with the pontoons across the lake. This guy gets halfway out into the middle of the lake. One of the bolts pops off the side of the pontoon. The The Jeep starts to list. It turns upside down and it sinks to the bottom. Again, everyone starts laughing. It's no big drama. They drive around the other side of the lake. One guy swims out with a winch cable. They flip the Jeep over on the bottom of the lake onto its wheels. They drag it out. And again, they strip the spark plugs out. They clean out the engine. They get the thing running and they just keep going. And I think that was the Jeep that actually drove us back to Saigon that night. A crazy, crazy experience, one that I will never ever forget. And definitely when I look back and when I talk to people, our experiences in Vietnam driving underwater are one of the most bizarre and memorable off-roading experiences I've ever had. Start next round. All right. Now I'm about to click on Robe or Conundrum. I'm pretty sure it's there. Now hang on a sec. Horseshoe cutouts, long rocks leading into... I know exactly where this is because I did a post on this on our Facebook page just a couple of days ago. Caught you guys out, otherwise you would have shafted me. Seriously, this is Talia Cave on the Eyre Peninsula. Whoa, and I almost clicked on Robe. I'd forgotten about that trip. All right, so we're gonna go all the way past Adelaide over to the Eyre Peninsula. And Talia Cave is, let's just take a guess. Guess that's somewhere there. Yep, not far off. It's further north of where I was. All right guys, stunning, stunning spot. This was getting towards the end of a major trip we did from chasing sharks all the way through to some serious beach off-roading and amazing history along the coastline of the Eyre Peninsula. We even stayed at a koala farm. Can't say that. We stayed at a koala farm. We stayed at a koala sanctuary and got to see a stack of koalas, which was just bloody awesome. And we had some of the best fish and chips that I've ever had down at Port Lincoln. We were then staying at a private four-wheel drive park, and out the back of that park we got toured down to Talia Caves, which is just a magical and glorious spot, and we saw one of the best sunsets you could ever imagine seeing out to the west. But as beautiful as it is, it's also a treacherous spot where the sand is super soft like it is through most of South Australia, and you can get caught out. Now I do remember for the second time, Mike Allard lost a CV and we entered into another massive recovery to get him off the beach. So guys, carry spares, be aware of what can go wrong, watch your tyre pressures and watch your CVs, especially in IFS vehicles, in those soft sandy conditions. Let's go again. Okay guys, this could be a hard one, but it's not. Amazing sunset, crazy jungle landscape and clouds through the trees there right across the valleys. This has got to be close to the home of the orangutan in Borneo. So not far from Sarawak, I'd say around, well, pretty much south of Kota Kinabalu. We're in Borneo, so let's find Malaysia. There's Japan and South Korea. There's Malaysia. There's the... All right. Kota Kinabalu, let's crack somewhere in there, our guess. This is in Malaysia, guys, a beautiful spot, Borneo, and I was the ambassador for the Trans Borneo 2017 again, and we spent 10 days trekking through the jungle. We had permission, diplomatic approval, and all of our visas to go through Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. But the big part about this trip is that on about the third or fourth night, we'd handed all our passports into some guys who were Indonesians, and they took off into Indonesia. We then trekked through the jungle, through a back route to cross the border, and ended up on a hill climb that I worked for 5 hours straight to get all of the last remaining cars of our 20-car convoy up a hill, recovering, winching, guiding. We got them all up, only to be met by 6 soldiers with semi-automatic firearms who detained us for 24 hours. Now in the end, we found out they only wanted to bribe, but we were unable to pass and get into Indonesia, even though our passports had all gone into Indonesia. An interesting time, a fun event, but overall, that trip was just incredible, guys. The cultural experience, the agriculture that we toured through and learnt about, the history of Borneo, the island, the politics there, but also the Australians and the combat that was seen there, the Australians sweeping through and pushing the Japanese out during Second World War, and the friendship. Friendship and food were huge, from eating rare fish at $400 a kilo to my first time experiencing durian was an absolute treat. And I was lucky enough to have a couple of mates and a few Aussies who came on the trip with us.
Oh. I can't do that at all. No.
But Malaysia, definitely a hotspot for off-roading and definitely some amazing memories from the Trans-Borneo. An incredible event, guys. And if you can ever tag along for the Trans-Borneo or the Borneo Safari, they are both amazing, amazing events that will blow your mind about what goes on in the jungles and how tough those conditions are. Start the next one. Oh yeah, again, you guys made it too easy. I know these rocks and this track. This is Quarry Road, Mount Disappointment, and I've done a stack of tracks there, a stack of trips, and a stack of adventures. We're going to start with one of the funniest ones, which was Triton Hill, which is a hill name because there's a rolled over smashed Triton at the bottom of it, and it's a steep, long hill, but it's the first 50 metres or so. It is the gatekeeper, the real challenge. When we were there, Danny went up in his 80 series, a very well prepped vehicle with a 6-litre V8, and Danny got to the rocky section, tried to skirt around it, and got bumped into an off-camber position that put him up on 2 wheels. Now from the footage, it looks like there was a small sapling that actually pushed him back down, so we'll call that a save. But Danny was able to winch a little bit and then drive that rest of the hill, and the rest of our convoy said, we're not having a crack at that, so let's turn around and go elsewhere. Another trip under very different conditions and very close to Quarry Road was a trip in winter. And we found a nice track with a couple of bog holes, and we'd send the camera crew ahead, which is usually a good idea, but in this instance was not a very good idea because they drove into a bog hole and absolutely swamped the camera car. So our red ute had water inside up to the level of the seats, and the car was an absolute mess, let alone the camera crew, who one of them even fell in waist deep water, but he saved the camera. So that's the most important part of that. But we were able to retrieve the vehicle, dry it out, and that vehicle is still running and still going and still ferrying our camera crew around, but we definitely need a new one. I didn't click on the screen again, I'm getting too excited about the locations. And that brings me to the final memorable point of Mount Disappointment, and again back on Quarry Road, where we took a few camper trailers down. Now I chose the harder route and skillfully got a small camper trailer down the hardest rocky ledges, the steepest section, and we put an off-road hybrid down the easier section, which should have been a nice straightforward drive, but the driver was possibly a little bit inexperienced. I was giving the right advice over the radio, but there were some issues with the car, which was a loan car and not ours, especially with the trailer brake, which kept locking on, and the trailer was slipping and skidding, causing a huge amount of drama. The result being extremely spectacular, although not that spectacular. The hybrid caravan went over on its side. We did an amazingly awesome recovery using a number of winches. We got that caravan back over onto all wheels, and the only damage was a couple of scratches on the door and I think a window. But the experience of doing a recovery to that level was definitely a fantastic learning point, a great experience, and awesome to show how it can be done safely and easily when you've got the right equipment, you stay calm, and you know what you're doing. So Mount Disappointment, guys, it never disappoints. Just north of Melbourne, it's well worth a look. Next one. Oh, come on guys, this is getting too easy. All right, this is from the very, very early days of four-wheel drive TV. We got invited to go filming in the Philippines. We went to a four-wheel drive shop called 199 Off-Road House, where they're doing some amazing things. They win a huge amount of awards. Great quality shop in Manila. The talk got around that we were there, a few other people turned up, and they decided that we'd go and do some four-wheel driving a few days later. So we had doctors calling up their surgery and getting all their patients cancelled. We had all sorts of stuff going on. We had lawyers, a lot of professional people, and we went out four-wheel driving. We went, I believe, a couple of hours south of Manila. We We went into this jungle area, shot plenty of great content with these amazingly well set up vehicles. And I'm going back like about 18 years, guys. And we got back to the lunch spot and I was busting. I needed to go. So I went for a walk into the jungle and I walked a fair way in because we wanted to get away so no one could see. And next thing I end up in this village and I'm looking around going, well, there's no people here, so I'm safe. So I relieved myself and headed back to where we were having lunch, which ended up being a massive, awesome roast pig. Pure lechon phyllo style. Absolutely amazing. I said to the guys, do you realize there's a village in there? And they just turned around without a blink of an eye and said, yeah, that's where Chuck Norris shot Missing in Action 2 when he came to the Philippines with his production crew. Like, we were actually on a private property that had been hired as a movie set for Chuck Norris way, way, way back in the day. So that was pretty hilarious and a pretty standout memory that I won't forget. But the four-wheel driving in the Philippines, getting to shoot guns, going to the shooting range, all the things that we got to do was just incredible, amazing experience. And again, guys, when you open up and start traveling to these areas and see what the off-roading's like and get to talk to the locals, they're just like you and I. They absolutely love their off-roading and wheeling, and we definitely get to see and do some amazing experiences and taste some very, very cool and awesome local food. All right, next one. Oh, this one could be a little bit tricky, but it's rocks, a little bit desert looking, but there's some low green cover. I'm gonna go with the Flinders Ranges. Now we've done a stack of trips to the Flinders Ranges. I don't think it was the last one. I reckon this could be the one where we did Billy Goat Ridge Track. Anyway, let's do what we keep forgetting to do and let's put this on the map. Flinders Ranges, north of Adelaide, eastish of Port Augusta. We'll click on there and have a guess. Warraweena. It is our last trip. Warraweena, guys, a tough day of off-roading. Beautiful station, a couple of pet goats, I think 3 actually. Lovely people and a beautiful place to visit. Historic, a lot of ruins as you drive in, and the scenery you get as you drive to the top of the mountain, just world-class scenery, environmentally protected. It's now set up like a nature reserve, so not even grazing there anymore, but the free open four-wheel driving that you can do there is just incredible. Now, when you do get to the summit of the mountain there, it's supposed to be the second highest point in the Flinders Ranges, but people are going to argue that point. We think they should start building a bit of a cairn on the top of it. You've only got to build it 4 meters and you will then have the highest peak in the Flinders Ranges. Guys, if you live in Australia or if you're from overseas, you want to put that on your hit list because it is one of the most iconic and stunning areas of Australia, well worth a visit. And that is the game finished, guys. Well, I was a little bit nervous and unsure going into that. I thought the guys had stitched me up, but my memory for an old bloke has proven to be a little bit better than I expected. That's Simon 1, 0 to the crew. What challenges do you reckon they should have for me next? Leave a comment below and let us know. Make sure you like and subscribe. And guys, more 4-wheel drive TV, more off-road adventures coming your way soon. Click here to check out one of the other videos we have uploaded today.